Welcome to 30-Minute Talks. I'm Dr. Andy Nazarechuk, and today we are here celebrating World Tourism Day, which happened on September 28th, just a couple of days ago. And we're looking forward to an exciting program. And let us get our greetings from Perry. Why don't you say hello to our audience?
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you might be in the world. Looking forward to another interesting week of our 30-minute talks. It's great to welcome you. And this week we've got an interesting topic lined up. Andy.
Alan.
Yeah, thanks very much. And again, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for another 30-minute talks. And today's topic about reopening the industry. Already we've had a few comments in the poll today about your thoughts and how the industry might handle that. But I think the presentation today might hopefully introduce a few new concepts to all of you. So we look forward to an interesting show.
And today is actually, as another day, we're very excited to welcome our academic partners. Without their support, we wouldn't have all of these students from different universities around the region, in some cases around the world. And we're looking forward to thanking our group. And we have the Macau Tourism Hospitality Association, University of Santo Tomas, Sunway University. We have even Prof. Hobson is from Sunway University. The University of Hawaii at Manoa School of Travel Industry Management, CoRep, Silver Mountain, University of Bahamas. So many people are joining the program, but we always appreciate the support we get from LPU, one of our strongest supporters of the program, and many of our students that are attending the program are from LPU. So don't forget to say hello say hello in the chat room and let us know that you're from LPU. But again, we're actually fortunate to have some new members. So Alan, why don't you say hello to our first one?
Thanks, Dr. Andy. And as Andy's mentioned, we're always thank all academic partners, and we welcome along the new academic partners for this week, part of the Pacific Asia Travel Association. Thank you very much for joining us, the Philippines chapter. We look forward to your support, and we look forward to supporting you in whatever way we can.
APAC CRE has also joined us. We did a webinar for APAC CRE just about and so we like to welcome that. They finally got approval from their board to join as an academic partner. So we'd like to welcome all the representatives from APAC CRE, and again, everyone from APAC CRE, everyone from PATA, all of those attendees are now eligible for a certificate. And we have one more special new academic partner that's joining us, and that's from the Joji Iligan International Schools in Davao. So they're students, and I know there are many students who have been joining us in the past, and I know that now they'll be very happy to know that when they fill out the survey and provide their 3 key learnings from the program, they will be eligible for a certificate today. So join us and make sure you put that certificate out there right away. And ready to start today's show? Let's get it. And the key thing I just mentioned, we're celebrating World Tourism Day. And the one thing about World Tourism Day is the Joji Iligan International Schools had a conference on Sunday to celebrate World Tourism Day. And their students hosted a wonderful conference about rural tourism development. And because of that conference, I was able to speak. And also one of our previous guest speakers, Dr. Vic Nair was actually was the co-speaker. So together we presented on rural tourism. And at that time, the real exciting thing was Dr. Vic was announcing the launch of his new book. So with that said, we're going to do 90 seconds today talking about rural tourism and his new book. And I hope you'll enjoy watching this 90-second video. And we're going to shut off our videos during this time. Welcome to 90 Seconds. I'm Dr. Andy Nazarechuk, and this week we have a special feature. Just a short time ago, I was invited, along with Dr. Vic Nair, to speak at the Tourism and Rural Development webinar, co-hosted by the Davao Tourism Association and the Joji Iligan International Schools. I was able to share my ideas for the rural tourism with the audience, and it was fun. The students produced the webinar, and they did a great job. But it was also a special day for Dr. Vic, as he announced the launch of his new book on rural tourism development. Here is Dr. Vic to tell you about his book.
Greetings. It is with great pleasure I would like to introduce you to our newly co-edited book published by Channel View Publication entitled Responsible Rural Tourism in Asia. This book was co-edited by myself, Vic Nair from the University of the Bahamas, Professor Amran Hamza from University of Technology Malaysia, and Professor Ghazali Musa, a former professor at University of Malaya. This book is also launched in conjunction with the World Tourism Day 2020, which was celebrated on 27 September with related themes business, tourism, and rural development. In this book, you will find 12 case studies from Bhutan, China, Vietnam, India, Philippines, Turkey, Timor-Leste, Cambodia, and Malaysia. So check out this book as we have a 75% discount for the hardcover until the 30th of September. Details are on the screen. So hurry up to get your copy now.
Our thanks to Dr. Vic for sharing this announcement during the World Tourism Day 2020. I'm Dr. Andy Nazarechuk, and thanks for joining us for 90 seconds. And yes, that was a great topic, and Dr. Vic did a great presentation. Is very detail oriented, and he's gave a lot of examples of how we were supposed to do that. But today's topic is, are you ready to reopen? So are you ready, Professor Hobson?
I certainly am, Dr. Andy.
As ready as ever. I'm not sure if the general guests of people are, but let's go.
Let's say, well, is everybody ready? Please put a note in the chat room. Let's see if you're ready. Well, let's get started. Today, we're gonna do it in 3 different parts. I'm gonna speak about marketing. Mr. Alan Williams will be speaking about operational concepts, and then ending up the discussion will be strategy by Professor Perry Hobson. And after that, we'll get together and we'll chat about what each person said and have a little discussion. And that's when we would like to see the questions from our audience. So let's get into our topics today. I will start, and I'm going to need a second to turn on my screen, and I'll ask my 2 fellow colleagues to turn off their screens for a second. Thank you. Okay, can everybody see me okay? I hope you can. Trying something new today. Okay, but again, the key question that you have to ask yourself today is, we can't wait until COVID-19 ends. We have to start thinking about how we are going to reopen our businesses. If you wait until COVID-19 ends, you could be waiting, depending on who you're listening to, next year, 2021, or you could be even waiting until 2022. How many businesses do you know that can stay closed or operating at a low capacity for that period of time? So today I'm gonna be talking about marketing, and so the key for my presentation is about marketing. So let's get started. When I was going to school, and the way I've operated all my years in business was understanding that marketing means to identify your customers. First, you have to know who you're trying to attract to your business. The second part is to attract them. How are you going to attract them? Is it going to be through ads, through commercials, through social media? All those different methods are great. Once you attract that person, that customer to your business, this is the key one that a lot of people forget. How do you retain that customer? So you want to retain that customer with loyalty programs. You want to retain that customer by providing many different quality services. You want to give them an experience that they won't forget, so they will want to come back. And that's a key thing when you're doing the marketing plan. Now, after you've done it, you've got a restaurant, you've got a hotel, you've got a business, and you've been operating, you've got your customers coming in. Then you have to sit back and analyze, who are our customers? Are they the same ones that we are trying to identify and attract? If they're not, then you're doing something wrong. But if they are, then that's great. You have attracted the customers that you want for your business. And the last one, as you can see, is evaluate. This is actually the most difficult one. At the end of a period, you have to sit there and go, well, we attracted the people that we were trying to come to our business. But the real question is, are we making money? Is it working? Or should we change the concept of our business and attract a different kind of customer? And the other one is, maybe you are trying to identify and attract a certain customer, but in reality, a different customer came, and maybe that is a better customer with a higher profit margin than the one you were trying to get. So that's sort of a marketing description for how you identify, attract, retain, analyze, evaluate. That's the cycle of marketing that I've always used and has been very successful. You have to sit back once in a while and look at your operations. Now, with that said, the question is, what are you selling? And so let me ask you this question. And look at this picture. And what is he selling? Is he selling art or is he selling memories? And you've seen these artists when you go on a trip and they're sitting in the street painting a picture of a bull and a picture of a dancer. This is not great art, but you buy it anyway. So the reason you buy it is not because it's art. You're buying it because that piece of art provides a memory and creates a memory of your trip to that particular destination. So this is the question you have to ask yourself, no matter what business you're in right now, is what exactly are you selling? Are you selling art or are you selling memories? So the second question, let's move on to the next one. What are you selling? Food or comfort? And you've heard that word comfort food, right? When you go out, when you eat that meal, you want to feel like you had a satisfying meal. You want to have a memorable experience. You want to have something that you say, wow, that made me feel good. And there's a lot of people when they're in stressful situations have a tendency to eat even more. So that's one of the things that, again, a question. If you're trying to sell food, anybody can do that. If you're trying to sell food that can make your customer comfortable, that could be a different menu mix. That could be a different way of service. That could be a different style, a different way of providing music in your environment, a different colors of your environment. All those things are providing a comfortable experience for your guests. Now let's look at the next one. Actually, see, how about this one, a hotel room. So what are you selling? Ask yourself, are you selling a room or are you selling safety? When I travel, I look forward to staying in a hotel, not because it's got a beautiful room or anything. I want it because it's safe. I've been traveling to a new town, a new city, a new destination, never been there before. I want someplace that's safe. That was the original concept of hotels in the early days in medieval times. You would go from one town to another town. It was dangerous out in the forest. And once you got to the tavern, the innkeeper, the tavern would let you stay there as a guest in a safe environment. And that hasn't changed to this day. So let's go to the next one, which is, what are you selling? What about this one? Are you selling a service or maybe wellness? See, if you look at it as a service, you're selling a pool with towels. But if you look at wellness, you're providing someone a place where they can de-stress, where they can relax, where they can escape the stressful pandemic where they are right now, where they're trapped, and give them some place where they can go, where they can feel better, improve their health. And that is a key when you're trying to convince people to come out after the pandemic. So I'm going to give you a new term. You've seen it. I'm saying it for the first time, comfort marketing. I want you to reconsider your business. I want you to reconsider what you sell. Is what you're selling making your customer comfortable? Because right now the whole world is scared. Even you could tell from our pre-show poll that a lot of people are not going out. Why? Because they're scared. They don't know if it's safe. And if you don't know if it's safe, you're never going to go out. So we as an industry have to create a safe, comfortable environment for our customers. Now, how are we going to do that? Actually, the question is where to start. Well, first, if you have a business, start in your neighborhood. You know, you don't realize that the building next to you may have 100 employees. The building across the street may have 200 employees. There may be wealthy families. There may be big families. There may be all kinds of families in your neighborhood. And do you really provide and market to those neighborhood customers? So flyers, social media, all those things are one way to attract your customer, because your neighborhood right now is your best customer. They don't have to travel far. They know where you are. And if you provide quality, safe service, you will be one of their best places to go. Now, the other thing is past customers. A lot of people haven't been out for a while. So you have to look at your information that you do have. If you have customer complaints, if you have customer suggestions, if you have collected email addresses one way or another, all of those things are ways you have to send them an email and say, we're open. I get advertisements for restaurants all the time, but when I get an email from my local restaurant from someone that I know, the manager, they say there's a special, then I go. But if you don't talk to your customers, they don't know what you're doing. Current customers, you better start collecting email addresses and being able to contact them to make sure that you put them on your list. Social media, email campaigns, all these things are very important for local restaurants, local businesses to get back. And the last one I'm going to say is offer a deal that will bring them back. You cannot expect people to leave the safety of their home and go out into the dangerous world unless you are giving them such a deal that they can't pass up. Yes, give them 2 meals for the price of 1. Give them a special, a free dessert. Give them anything you have to get them to know that your restaurant, your business, your hotel is safe. And once they come that first time, word will spread that you're a great place to go. Other people will go, and that's what marketing is. So I'm going to suggest that you have comfort marketing. Try to convincing your customers that your place is comfortable and safe, and that's how you'll get back into the game and reopen your business. And I'm Dr. Andy, and that's the end of my marketing session. And next we have on the list is to follow up, there's Mr. Alan Williams. Alan, it's all yours.
Fantastic, Andy, and thank you very much for sharing your very interesting presentation as usual, and some fantastic thoughts there about a new concept in marketing. And let me add to that, because I'm going to follow that presentation up with: Are you ready to reopen? Some operational concepts, and I'm hoping that I can share some thoughts with our viewers today.
Well,
so as everyone's acutely aware, the impact of the coronavirus has had some devastating effects over the last 9 months, and in many places still continues to have rather devastating effects on the hospitality and tourism industry. So I'd like to share with you some of the operational concepts that restaurants and bars might consider in order that they might be assisted in successfully reopening, using some of the marketing concepts that Andy's spoken about, and I guess using some of the strategies that our colleague Professor Perry Hobson will speak about shortly. So whilst the pandemic in most countries started by practically putting a stop to all restaurant and bar service, particularly dine-in services, unfortunately, as governments and industry started to reopen, the industry still continues to struggle with continued trading and a whole range of limitations, including a second or potentially a third wave of infections. And this results in many countries adopting a staged reopening model. Lack of consumer confidence, as we've just heard from Dr. Andy there. Whole number of staffing issues, not being able to retain staff, not being able to maintain staff, not being able to pay staff, all those challenges. Cash flow problems, or even in many cases, liquidity challenges. So these are only a few of the challenges being experienced by operators today. So given some of these challenges, whilst there still remains these restrictions in place, I'm going to share with you several operational concepts that you might want to consider post-COVID-19 pandemic. And we've already heard everybody's got a slightly different view about when it's right time to open, how we might reopen, and what's the best and safest way to go about that. It is, however, no matter what I discuss with you today, extremely important to remember that during the pandemic, and now also during this time of reopening, the number one priority is to keep your staff, your customers, and your suppliers safe. Everybody wants to be in that safe environment. There are various stages to reopening, and distancing guidelines that vary significantly from country to country. So safe in one place is not safe in another place, but I guess it's important that the industry comes to terms with that and adapts their business to deal with what is safe. Especially be aware of the recommended industry guidelines for hospitality and tourism industry in your location, and display these for your guest safety. So firstly, let me share with you what reopening has meant so far for the restaurant and bar industry in Western Australia, where I live. And at the moment, this is the change in model, where as we move into we've been in stage 4 for some time now. All food businesses and licensed premises can open. And so there are no restrictions anymore on seated service where I live. But I know that this is very different, again, across the regions in Australia. So for example, in Victoria, in Melbourne, there are still some severe restrictions in place where people can't leave the home, as Dr. Paul Whitelaw mentioned in his chat earlier on in today's session. However, in many places, still in Western Australia, venues can't allow more than one person per 2 square meters. So for example, if your restaurant is made up of 200 square meters, you can only hold 100 persons. So there are still some restrictions in terms of the number of people that you can put into the restaurant or the bar spaces. Patrons can now purchase alcohol with or without a meal, and they don't any longer have to be seated. So there was a restriction around people being seated. And if a food business or licensed premises is at capacity, they can still provide takeaway, but this is only if the people keep 1.5 meters away from each other and they are outside of the venue. And all venues must continue to practice good hygiene. And this is a summary of just some of the key restrictions that are still in place. There are still a number of other restrictions, but I guess these might be the common restrictions that you might experience as the industry experiences some sort of reopening strategy wherever you may live. So if your region hasn't reached what we call in stage 4, you may not experience, you may experience some of these limitations, and they're obviously still having impacts on limiting trade restrictions. And the final restriction that I want to put in place is WA cafes and restaurants and pubs should update their COVID safety plans and implement them. So the first operational concept is now's the time for you to revisit your COVID-19 safety plan. And this may include where you continue to display COVID safety signs, continue to supply hand sanitizers to promote good hygiene practices, promote the use of face masks where and as necessary, reorganize the seating and the table plans to conform with the social distancing requirements in your area. You sanitize tables and chairs using disinfectants between each seating. Obviously, you train your staff, and your staff should be well trained now about touching food and drinks and cleaning surfaces and so on. And most importantly, promote your restaurant bar commitment, your commitment to the safety and hygiene of all of your customers and all of your staff, and let them know that you're serious through this promotion. And a recent question that I was asked visiting a restaurant just over this last weekend was, as I was entering the restaurant, have I had a fever or suffered a flu-like symptom in the last 14 days? And I think this question might become a standard operational question that your restaurant or your bar asks when guests are making reservations or when they are arriving at the restaurant, so that there's some level of safety for the restaurant and the bar on that evening. Another operational concept, if you haven't already implemented this, and I've spoken about this in a previous 30 minutes talk, but I'll mention it one more time. With revenue in the online food delivery projected to reach US 2.082 billion in 2020, and that was adjusted because of the COVID effects, there are two main streams of delivery for your restaurants to consider. So if you don't already have a delivery methodology, restaurant to customer delivery and platform to customer delivery services are the two main forms of revenue growth through delivery. So restaurant to customer delivery, organize and implement third-party food delivery services such as Deliveroo or Menulog or DoorDash or Grab or Uber Eats. There's many of them out there. And in fact, some restaurants have gone as far as implementing their own food delivery methodologies now. So they've got their own drivers and their own delivery personnel. That's a little more expensive, but then again, there is a cost that goes with all levels of delivery. And the platform to customer delivery is, who would have thought that Pizza Hut, when they launched their first ever pizza delivery online in 1994, online food delivery has become a billion-dollar business. So be mindful that the delivery platform or the company that you select to carry out your food delivery, some of them take over 20% of your revenue. So be aware that whilst food delivery is a great way of increasing your revenues and giving you another revenue stream, there are also significant costs that can go with it. So choose carefully if you're going into the delivery space, but it is certainly an area that's growing and one that is recommended. So simply put, if your restaurant doesn't already have a food delivery service or a solution established, now's the time to get it set up. Very closely related is the takeaway options. So takeaway or takeout is not a new concept, but has also become more popular as a consequence of COVID-19. And the key here is to design a takeaway friendly menu that with your staff, and preferably using all of your perishable goods that you order, use them up first. Make sure that your food or drink is takeaway friendly, that that means that it's packageable, that it's still fresh and still tastes as you prepare it when it reaches home. And I know that's a challenge with all takeaway foods. It's important, however, to adhere to your prescribed food standards and your food safety plan when implementing takeaway foods. Remember to use biodegradable or reusable materials for the packaging. And remember, what you save on staff costs, you may spend a little extra on the packaging. And as most people will have cutlery at home, there's no need for the extra disposable cutlery that's being used. This is also some sort of cost saving if it's not been taken home. And one other method in terms of new concepts is to make your food instant or social worthy. And Andy picked up this in the marketing, but some strategies being used by restaurants now is that I believe this is one of the greatest marketing tools available today, is this Insta-worthy or marketing strategy about taking pictures of the food that you serve in the restaurant and putting them online and distributing them through social media. And lots of restaurants are coming up with the ideas or the concepts of using those photographs as a competition to reward the customers that take the best photograph and post the best photographs. And that really is creating a database of loyal customers, a database of people that are coming in and photographing, a database of new followers, and a whole new market share. Once these photos are posted, I mentioned the strategy there might be to share them with others. But I've also mentioned in a previous 30 minutes talk that if you're going to follow this social strategy or this instant strategy, make sure that the menu items are also available for delivery and takeaway to ensure its ultimate effectiveness and that profitability is maximized. It's also really important that you track and use your social media data to consider the ways that you might improve your business. And Dr. Andy mentioned in his presentation as well, using the information that you have to help grow your business. So this is just some examples of Google Analytics and some of the Facebook demographics that have come out of a campaign that we ran recently. Another quick concept is sell or pre-sale vouchers or gift vouchers. And many coffee shops take advantage of the customer loyalty and selling pre-sale vouchers for coffee. Generally, vouchers are not redeemable for cash, so they ensure that existing customers will come back and use their vouchers, or that you gain new customers through this process. So the pre-sale voucher creates immediate revenue for the restaurant or the bar or the coffee shop, whilst also creating some level of customer loyalty. Remember, however, and this is a trick for you, is that many restaurants still today don't make the vouchers available for sale on their website or through their social media avenues. So if you do have vouchers available, sell them online as well and let customers get good access to them and use them. And then I think one of the last concepts that I'm going to share with you is, most importantly, understand your data. And I think many restaurants and bars fail in this space. So if you really look at the word crisis in Chinese, it's actually made up of two characters, danger and opportunity. And we're all very aware of the dangers of late, but the opportunity is, what can we do today that we should have done before, or we could have done better before? And one of the biggest things is understanding and controlling the costs in order to be successful and become more profitable. So an example here might be, while business is on the uptake and you've got less inventory, and there's an opportunity here to learn how to better manage your food costs, revamp your menu and widen your margins. Remember, food costs is only one consideration. You need to also consider your labor costs and all of your other fixed costs. But all of this data should be collected and analyzed on a daily basis. And when you speak to many restaurateurs, getting them to tell you what their food cost is sometimes a challenge. They don't actually know. Getting them to tell you what their staffing cost is also sometimes a challenge. They don't actually know. And when you talk to them about other fixed costs, it's almost a maze. So the good thing about being in a crisis is that it really gives the industry an opportunity to get rid of all those things that are nice to have and strip back the business back to basics and get back to those things that we must have. And this will give you a bit of an opportunity to strategically look at the business to ensure that it runs a little bit leaner and meaner and ultimately a little more profitable. Smart operators are going to look at their key performance indicators on a daily basis, and they're going to have to look at their P&Ls a little more often than that. And as I said, it amazes me the number of restaurateurs and bar operators that really don't understand their costs and their profit margins. And finally, I hope that I've outlined some of the operational concepts being used in the restaurant bar industry, and that may also help assist you in reopening post-COVID. And I know, again, most countries are in different stages, but more importantly, I hope that these ideas offer some sort of streamlining or improving of revenues and profitability for the longer term in your business. So thank you for your time, and let's share the screen so that Professor Perry Hobson can join us.
Thank you, Alan. Is Perry, you ready to go for strategies? And
Absolutely.
some questions for Alan. After this is done, I have some questions for Alan because we talked about some of the same topics in a different way. So I think that's great. Perry, all yours.
Thank you very much. And you've probably got a bit of an idea what I'm going to focus on this afternoon. And because obviously as the industry starts to rethink where it's going, it's got to really work hard to revision what it does and how we're going to get to where we need to be going. And as students, obviously, you're going into a very different industry. So where we were and where we are now and where we're going to be is going to be something for everyone to consider. And so, you know, as the industry reopens, what type of things are they going to be looking for? And I think innovation is going to be very much part of what that future is going to be, because businesses are going to now have to really rethink very quickly who they are, who their customers are, and just how things are going to be changing as we go forward from here. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about some of that. Now, in the old days, we used to talk about don't leave home without it, actually referred to American Express. But of course, today, that refers much more to going out with a mask rather than the credit card. So our world has absolutely changed, and it's finding that change. And now we've got to start rethinking as an industry what that means. And I think if I go back just a few months, Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, was pointing out, you know, and this was back in April, that, you know, this is just the beginning. We've got a long way to go on this. And, you know, Germany itself has just recorded several thousand infections a day. And that's one of the more stable European countries. So we're by no means, I'm sorry to say, out of the woods of this yet. So COVID has been devastating for many businesses. And the question is, where to from here? Countries are still struggling with these sorts of issues. So COVID has emptied our airports, our buses, our train stations. It's emptied our hotels, our beaches, and our restaurants. And so the question is, how are we going to rebuild from where we go on that? Because we don't want to end up on the scrap heap of history. And clearly, we've got to start rethinking about how this industry is going to come back and how we're going to come back with it. Now, no one wants to become roadkill of this. And so the question is going to be for so many businesses is that question of how do you not sink? And over the last few months and in many countries, we're seeing businesses hang on, try and survive. In many countries, there's been funding for businesses to survive. The question is, when will that funding run out? How long can it continue for? So how can businesses get in shape to be ready to reopen, and can they survive that part? And that begs the question of, you know, what's the future of tourism going to look like once we do get out of this? And if things come back quite slowly, depending on how quickly a vaccine is able to be made, how it can be distributed. So a lot of businesses are reaching out for help to work out what their potential might be. And so as we look into that future, what's it likely to be? So at the moment, most businesses are in survival mode. And this is quite challenging, obviously, for a lot of businesses, for a lot of employees. But as Alan was just saying, you know, we have to hang on to, because if your employees are critical to your business, many people have to work out what it is that can keep their business going. Now, I'm going to today talk about 5 tips, but time is tight, so I'm not going to be able to go through all of those. So the survival is tackling the current situation, and most businesses have already been dealing with that, trying to work out how to downsize, keep their core business. But the reality is that core business may not be the business that comes back. As Dr. Andy's been pointing out, there may be other business opportunities that arise. And one of the first things to do, one of the big changes, has been this whole change into the digital. Now, we've seen a company like Flight Centre, for example, it has gone into survival mode. It has had to lay off over 6,000 staff. It's had to shut half its operations. It's having to rethink who it is. Interestingly, just last week, Thomas Cook, a business that went bust over a year ago, well before COVID, just announced it was coming back, purely as an online business, the world's oldest travel company. Now, they have had to rethink who they are. Air New Zealand has been looking at who they are going to be. They've now worked out they're going to be about 30% smaller, at least, in terms of when they come back. And this has got huge implications for their businesses. So when you're in survival mode, you're looking at what can you do. And so some businesses have been thinking quite innovatively about this. Qantas, for example, recently got rid of all its 747 planes. So what it decided to do was to sell all its drink cards. And they were stocked with booze. You can see here, nearly $1,000 Australian for a half one or $1,500 for a full one. They sold out within 2 hours. Now, this is very much a survival technique. And Thai Airlines has been moving on this as well. They've now started opening up some restaurants in Bangkok, building off what was actually an employee restaurant. In Taiwan, you see airlines look at doing flights to nowhere as a way of just getting people comfortable with going back onto planes. And a lot of this is about keeping your brand relevant in the marketplace. So you still exist. You're saying to customers, we're still here, we're ready. So when you're ready to travel, we're going to be the people that look after you. Now, some companies have realized perhaps flights to nowhere aren't the way to go. So Singapore Airlines this week announced they weren't going to do flights to nowhere. Instead, what they've done is they've opened up their training center. You can go and do makeup classes to look like a Singapore girl. They've opened up their onboard restaurants in that training restaurant simulator, or you can even get a Singapore Airlines chef to come to your home. So again, ways of keeping their staff employed, generating some revenue, survival to tide them over. Now, other businesses are using this as a way of reimagining their fleets. So for example, Air Baltic is using this opportunity to get rid of their old planes, buy up new planes, and many other airlines are doing this. And here in Malaysia, we've got task force looking at how the future will look like when things come back, because we're recognizing that the future will not look like the past. Now, each business has to look at itself and say, what are your underlying strengths? So what is it that made you successful in the past? May not be what makes you successful in the future, but what was it in the business that gave you that success ingredients? And now is the time to start innovating, to get in those light bulb moments when you can look at how the market has changed, what it is that customers want. And as Dr. Andy was saying, if it's now about comfort, if it's now about feeling secure. Now, this means making some big leaps from companies, because obviously you've got to change the way you do business. And what may have seemed impossible not long ago has now become possible. Even in education, universities a year ago said, oh, teaching everything online. No, that's impossible. We only do face-to-face. Well, suddenly that impossible became very possible. Now, obviously the traditional tools of planning remain. But the question is now is that we've got to do this at a different speed, a different way of approaching the market. And of course, a lot of that, as in those 5 tips, is about use of technology, because that's probably going to be the secret way of upgrading. So the question is, how can you strengthen your online presence? How can you use technology in a much more innovative way than many companies were using it in the past? Now, if you've been using your computer this way with lots of sticky notes, then you've got a bit of a problem. We need to rethink the whole business environment and put that online. And many businesses have been thinking about it. One, for example, here in Malaysia is called AirAsia. And over 2.5 years ago, they changed the role of their CEO. They put her in charge of digital transformation. Now, this was an airline, but yet they've looked to see how they can make everything that the business does digital. They've reckoned that the pandemic has shifted e-commerce by 5 years. So in just 5 months, we've made 5 years of progress. And this has changed all sorts of habits, from shops and shopping malls to how we are now approaching businesses, because we don't want to touch things. So in the past, we talked about high touch. People don't want to touch things. We want low touch now. But what we do want to do is to be engaged. We've got a generation of digital natives. And so the question now is how to engage those digital natives, to reach out to them and to get your business, whether you're a hotel, a restaurant, an airline, to be engaged with people and to find other and new and innovative ways to reach out and communicate. Don't forget the customers you had. They're still there. They will come back, but they need to keep that relationship with them. So find innovative ways to keep connecting with them. There may be other ways that this can be done, using both technology and touch. I was reminded of this story, particularly out of a Chinese travel agency. So a way that they looked to keep in touch with people was they start selling food from the destinations they were going to, as a way of reminding their customers of the experiences that they'd had and that these will be, once again, experiences to look forward to in the future. So there are innovative and interesting ways of doing it, because the future of technology will only get faster, and there will be other things that our technology can do that we can only imagine now, but will be with us in a few years to come. So we have to start looking for those solutions very much online. So as we look for those innovations, think about how technology can be central to that. Those other key things, understanding your markets, the experiences or memories, as Dr. Andy was saying, that you're offering are still going to be there. Let me just finish off by turning back to AirAsia. Now, AirAsia is an airline. I used to fly them an awful lot. I'm not going anywhere at the moment. But they're in touch with me virtually every day with something else, whether it's trying to sell me through their AirAsia shop because they had duty-free shopping, they'll now deliver it to my home. They've launched records. They're still working with theme parks here in Malaysia. This is a promotion with Subway Pyramid next door to my university. So they are connecting still and staying relevant to their customers. Several years ago, AirAsia looked at the one thing that most people hated, which was airline food. They were a low-cost carrier, not well known for airline food. And yet what they managed to do was, before the pandemic, they innovated and said, we are going to take on US fast food chains selling AirAsia airline food. Now, I'll be honest, a lot of people told them they were nuts, but they innovated. They showed how they can do that. And they're hoping to have over 100 shops, stores through their franchising model. The second one, again, just opened next door to Sunway University and our Pyramid Shopping Mall. So you can begin to see how you can innovate and do things differently. Because as we come out of this pandemic, we've got to look for the green shoots. We've got to look for those possibilities, because to build the business back up, you've got to start looking for those things. So I'll go through the rest of these tips on another 30-minute show. So hopefully this has given you some things to think about, because we've got to think out of the box. We've got to think a bit differently for what we're doing as we go forward into the future. Dr. Andy and Alan, back to you.
Very good, Perry. Some very interesting concepts. The one thing I'm going to jump right away is you showed a picture of a hotel in Las Vegas, the Iligan Hotel, and being demolished. And that's actually a perfect example. The Iligan Hotel was built in Las Vegas. It was successful for a few years, but after many years, they tried and tried and tried to make it profitable, to attract new customers, and it just didn't work. So they knocked down that entire hotel. It was like a 1,000-room hotel. They knocked it down and destroyed it. And in its place was opened Planet Hollywood, Las Vegas. And that hotel is doing very well because there's a whole new market, whole new customer. So it's a perfect example. I think I was actually made a note. Someday I'll do a show on just the demolition of hotels in Las Vegas. It was very exciting. I can tell you many stories about that in the future. Alan?
Absolutely, Andy. And I think something else you picked up on in your presentation was neighborhood and really tapping into the neighborhood clientele and you know, that new market segment that you may not have touched before. I think an interesting question might have been in the session today, and maybe one we can ask later on, is whilst our viewers are not traveling and going out to restaurants and bars, how many of them are using their local restaurants in terms of takeaway or pickup? And how many people are still engaging with the industry in one way or another? But that's not very clear to me. But I think, Perry, you picked up on some fantastic ideas about, yes, having to think out of the box, having to look at new ideas, having to look at innovative ways, and Andy's covered that. I think that's really about the industry, but this thing about comfort is still coming back to me. When do the customers become comfortable in reusing the industry?
Well, I think that's a key point, and I think the challenge is to how we extend that comfort zone, and you know, that we take customers back onto the journey. I think people do want to travel; they want to get back to doing things they were doing, but it's now making sure that they feel comfortable along that journey. So I think, as you were mentioning there, businesses rethinking, and I think AirAsia is a good example of a company that has constantly innovated, looked to do things differently, even before the pandemic. And a lot of other companies just stuck to what they were doing, and you know, very little about some innovation. And so it's now looking at, you mentioned, Alan, very little simple things you're doing about how you can innovate products, take away, what type of utensils, everything else you're doing with that. We've got to think through that and across that digital journey as well, so that people feel contacted and in contact the whole time.
And Alan, in your presentation, you talked about taking photos of food, which I think is great, but you also have to be very careful with that. Because when I go into a restaurant and they show me a beautiful picture of a dish, an entree that they're going to serve to me, and then it comes to me and it doesn't match, I'm very disappointed. So sometimes you have to be, if you have a feature, the one thing I always tell restaurants, if you have a feature item that you want to take a picture of, great, go ahead and do it. But then you have to make sure that each and every time it goes out, it has to match that picture. And I've had many experiences where it doesn't, and I question how come it doesn't match the picture? This is what's on your menu. Oh, we have a different chef now. They have a dozen different excuses. So that's an interesting but careful. We have to be careful with that when you promote something. But for specials, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, listen, Andy, I absolutely agree. But I think that puts the pressure back on the industry to deliver on their own promise, and I think that's all too often the problem, that the experience that we're being sold, not only in restaurants and bars, but in destinations and whatever, what you see and what you get is two different things, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges our industry has faced in the past and may still face in the future. But yeah, I'm with you.
Alan, you said a story about Pizza Hut too, delivery. I grew up in New York, and Pizza Hut started around there. And when we were in college, they guaranteed delivery of the pizza in 20 minutes, or it was free. So
beautiful.
we want olives and anchovies, and we want this, we want peppers, we want half cheese. We would make the most crazy combination pizza we could in order for it to be late. They would always deliver it on time. The pizza tasted like cardboard, but they always delivered on time. But today, I think Pizza Hut has actually become a quality pizza in its delivery, in the quality, and it's come a long way from the early days. Perry?
Yeah, well, I remember those early days of Pizza Hut and Domino's getting on the market, etc. And I think what we're seeing here is that that was a game changer. Pizza before was something you went out to have, and Pizza Hut for a long time wasn't really just focused on that home delivery market. Domino's really got in on that market and changed it. And again, that was very innovative, because they were the first guys who set up and said, we don't have any seats in our restaurant. We just have delivery or takeout. And that was, again, a game changer. So it was innovative. And I think, lots of things that we take for granted now, the way we've done things in the past, we have to rethink them and to relook at how customers now want things in this post-COVID environment. And we've got to rethink exactly everything we do.
Alan, Perry, I'm going to say we had an interesting presentation today. We had some questions and a good discussion, but I think our time is running out. So it's time for us to get back to the program, and we have to thank our partners. And of course, before we move on, we have to say hello to Bob Zilberado from PATA. He's out in the audience today, and so is a past president from APAC Creek, Carol Pito. She's out there, and Joji from Joji Iligan International Schools from Davao is actually in the audience. So our new academic partners are showing their support just by being here, and we always appreciate that.
And the current chair of the ICE, Dr. Paul Whitelaw, is out there somewhere. I saw his comment a moment ago.
And of course, we have to promote next week's program. And next week, we're very excited to be discussed. The topic is going to be India. And India, it's incredible India. And as we mentioned before, one of the things that we like is the fact that our speakers come and live in the countries that they're talking about. And Professor Parashad is a longtime friend from APAC Cree, and we've known him for many years. And he's going to be coming in, visiting us from India and telling us about an update in India. As you know, tourism in India is one of the greatest places in the world. For many years, they had the longest travel time for tourists to stay. Tourists would actually average 2 weeks in India. But today, with the current pandemic, things have changed. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he's going to tell us next week. Perry?
Likewise, and India's got lots of challenges, an amazing country. Incredible India has been a very well thought through campaign for a long time, but a country that's got a lot of huge domestic market, lots of challenges going forward. Going to be very interesting to hear a lot about that from Parakshat next week.
And as Andy and Perry have mentioned, Parakshat's been known to us for some time, so it'll be good to hear him speak. He always has a very interesting, colourful presentation.
And Alan, why don't you talk about our certificates one more time?
Yes, as Dr. Andy's said before, and we say every week, everybody, the certificates are available. I saw somebody mention in the session today that they didn't receive their certificate from last week. So if that does happen, just send us your email address and we can check to make sure that you've completed the survey and you've done that accurately. But you'll get a copy of the code for today, the QR code very shortly that you can scan. Please complete the survey in order to receive the certificate. It was mentioned earlier today as well that you must complete at least 3 learnings from today's program. And we look for more than 1 word in what you've learned in each of the spaces. And on completion of that, we will obviously, you'll then qualify for a certificate and we'll send that out for you by the end of the week.
And I'm putting out the link for the certificate right now in the chat room, so you can take a look at that, and that'll help you make it a little bit easier for you to find it. And our last slide here is actually our thank you. So Perry.
Well, thanks again very much for joining us for another 30-minute talks. We look forward to seeing you again next week. I'm going to leave you that keyword, innovation.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you all again. Thank you for taking your time and joining us at 30-minute talks. And we look forward to a fantastic presentation about Incredible India next week. Thank you.
And I'm Dr. Andy Nazarechuk, thanking you for joining us for 30-minute talks. Here's the QR code for you to complete the survey. The link is in the chat room. And don't forget, you can always visit our website at www.30minutetalks.com to register for the next program, which is something we've never had before. So if you don't get the flyer, if you missed the flyer, or you want to know what the next program is, you can register online at 30 Minutes Talks. And we update that actually every Friday. We update it. So that's when you can see the next registration area. So thank you very much for joining us. Copy this QR code down. And here's the link for the survey one more time. And we'll see you all next week.